We are firmly of the belief that there is absolutely no wrong way to play with toy soldiers so long as you're having fun.
Welcome back to another episode of the HMG podcast. I'm your host, Gorchin. Joining me, I've got Dan and Jacob.
G'day, everybody.
And we have a very special guest with us. We have the inimitable Marcus joining us from Warlord Games. Say hello to everybody, Marcus.
Hey, folks. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, look, we're very happy to have you on the show. I think this is the second time a random email of mine has snared at least one Warlord Games employee onto the show. So I feel like I should continue sending off random emails to Warlord.
We're fairly easy to entice with offers of chatting about hobbies, so we're not that hard to grab.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, actually, speaking of chatting about hobby, I think stalwart viewers of the show will probably know this, but I'm not sure if you've heard it, Marcus, so I guess for your benefit, bolt action is kind of the main reason why I'm in wargaming and in hobby in general, and it started around 2018, 2019. So I suppose a huge thank you through you to Warlord Games for actually bringing me back into the fold of being a huge turbo nerd and getting me back into painting and all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, also thank you for all of the fantastic prize support through War and Peace that you guys have had for us here at Down Under. So thank you.
Oh, no, absolutely. And to be honest, thank you for being part of the family, for being part of the Warlord Games community. You know, it's not just about us putting product out there into the world. It is, you know, so much of it is led by the awesome folks like yourselves in the community, by stores and distros like War and Peace that bring everyone together, and that, you know, there's the end result of war games, right? It's not just about building models, about painting models. It is about getting together with your mates. It's about playing games. It's about meeting new people and just having a great time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times people forget about that, particularly at tournaments. But we can kind of get into the tournament like breakdowns a little bit in a little second. I was just wondering. I'm sure you've been around, you've been on podcasts, you've written articles and that sort of thing. But for the sake of our viewers who might not know you super well, Marcus, if you give us a quick intro about yourself and kind of your role at Warlord Games.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Marcus. Officially, my long-winded job title is the Warlord Games hobby content producer and tournament coordinator as part of our marketing team. And it's a split role. So the hobby content producer side is generally any words that are needed, you know, anything that requires writing, whether that's product text, whether that's sometimes stuff for socials, obviously whether that's articles for the community site, bits and bobs for the website, just press releases, anything where we might need words. By and large, that's going to come across my desk, and I'll end up putting those words out there. The other side of that, obviously, is just being part of the marketing team and generally being involved in that creative process, in working out, you know, how we are going to market our products, working out, you know, how we're talking to our wider community and all that good stuff. So that's the hobby content producer side of the role. And the other side is tournament coordinator. And what that is essentially is I am responsible for supporting and enabling tournament organizers all over the world to put on the very best events they possibly can for their game, for our games, for their communities. So that's obviously in terms of prize support, in terms of advice and guidance, in terms of providing marketing support through the events website, and generally anything else people might need in order to make their events as good as possible. Obviously, I don't do that completely alone. In North America, everything is handled by the fantastic John Russell and his awesome team of raiders. And then in Australasia, as you've mentioned, we've got War and Peace Games, who are fantastic long-term partners of ours who provide all that same level of support. And that's very simply because of the distances involved. It just makes it much more economical for us to get support out to Australia, and it means we can get it much quicker, and it means there's a much more reliable supply chain. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
Yeah, big nutshell. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I was just going to add in there, like, how long have you been working for Warlord Games? Is this the only kind of positions that you've done for them, and what kind of history you have outside in the hobby in
Yeah,
general,
of
from
course.
apart from working for Warlord?
Yeah, of course. I'll sort of answer those in the order you've asked. So actually, it's quite funny. At the time of recording, yesterday was my 5-year anniversary at Warlord. Um,
Congratulations.
and thank you. It has absolutely flown. It's been amazing. Didn't really notice, and I sort of looked on our, our HR systems like today is your work anniversary, which was that was a very cool little thing. So prior to this, I've been on the marketing team for a couple of years now, coming on for 2 years. Prior to that, I was part of our customer service team, and I do just have to say, because the War Games Illustrated Awards have just come out, 7 years in a row award-winning customer service team. So congratulations to the lads there,
And well
keeping
earned.
the
Yeah.
tradition going.
Yeah.
Oh, but prior to that, I was on the customer service team. That was a really good grounding in learning how the industry works, learning how we work as a company, and obviously interacting every single day with loads of awesome people in the community, and just getting to help them have the most fun possible in the hobby. Whether that is resolving an issue with shipping, or whether that's giving them advice on like how do I paint this tank, or what should I buy next. And that was a really fulfilling and rewarding job. And then I got a great opportunity to move into the more the writing side, the creative side, and that's just kind of expanded from there, which has been really, really fun. Prior to Warlord, I've done a few jobs. I sold cars and I sold telecoms for a little bit. Prior to that, I was in the prison service for nearly 3 years, and that was sort of my first real job. But as a war gamer, I think for my journey's pretty common to a lot of people, and it started with Games Workshop, as so many do. I remember it would have been when I was about 8 or 9 at school. There must have been a teacher there who played, because in the library there was a big stack of old white dwarfs from sort of the real golden
Nice.
era for me of white
Nice.
dwarfs. Early to mid 2000s, that golden age. Um, uh, and I think my parents realised, with sort of a growing sense of dread, that their son was turning into a wargamer. I think to be honest, they were happy that I'd found a hobby that I really liked, and a good community. Um, so I started out, obviously with the usual workshop stuff, and then when I went to sort of university, I went to university in Nottingham. I was
Right.
exposed to obviously an awful lot more people playing a lot of other different games. But at the time, I was still very much a Games Workshop gamer. So I knew about a lot of historical games. I was very interested in them, but I'd not really done much with them. And then the job opportunity came up after I'd left the prison service. I was working a couple of sales jobs, and I wasn't really feeling particularly satisfied. And the job came up at Warlord for customer service, and I thought, you know what, I can do that. And Warlord make bolt action. I've been wanting to play bolt action forever. I applied, I got the job, and that's how I came to be at Warlord. And I've never really looked back, because by the time I got to Warlord, I think I was doing that thing that a lot of people do in their sort of early mid 20s, where they're sort of a little bit done with the current state of 40k or whatever your workshop game of choice was. And I
Yeah.
was looking for something new, and bolt action was the perfect thing. And I've really honestly never looked back since. I am now pretty much a pure historicals gamer, to be honest.
Yeah, well, fantastic. It's a really interesting journey there, Marcus. And I was wondering, I've got I guess a little bit of I don't know if leading question is the right word, but one of the things that I come across a lot, particularly like online in some of our local communities, is like, what's like Warlord's official stance on tournament? Like, where's the tournament like booklet, or here's what a quote unquote balanced tournament of bolt action looks like, 1,000 points or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And I think, because a lot of other game companies do that, and I think there's, I don't know if expectation is the right word, but it's a conventional approach, but you have a slightly different kind of perspective on that.
absolutely. So we are firmly of the belief that there is absolutely no wrong way to play with toy soldiers, so long as you're having fun.
Yeah.
So long as everyone is having fun, you're playing it the right way. And because Bolt Action, let's talk Bolt Action here, because that is the game of ours that's played the most in a competitive environment, in a tournament environment. Bolt Action is such a broad church of what it offers when you start to factor in your campaign books, your theatre books, and all of the different permutations of platoons and all your different missions and all of the different ways to play. I personally think it would be sort of folly to try and enforce a hard and fast, this is the official supported way that you have to play. We and I have an enormous amount of faith in organizers in the community and in the community itself, that they will put on events that people want to go to in their community. And I think one of the great joys of Bolt Action is that you can, even in a small country like England, you can go to a tournament in, say, Nottingham, and it's going to have one tournament pack that means it goes goes one way. You know, a certain list might do better than others. You know, you're going to be playing certain types of missions on certain types of tables. And then you go down the road to Leicester and you play something completely different. And then you go down the road a little bit further, you know, you go down south to somewhere like Southend-on-Sea, and you're playing something completely different again. And you go over to Wales, completely different. And I think that's some of the real beauty of it, is that it means that you've got that reason to go to all these different groups, all these different clubs and these different TOs and these different communities, and play Bolt Action in a different way every time, but still with that competitive mindset. And it makes, I think, for much more rounded players. You know, you look at people like Bo Mortensen, who do videos on the competitive meta of Bolt Action. And I love that. I really love stuff like that. I love talking things like that.
And his videos are great.
Nerd. They're great. Yeah, I love the stuff that Bo's doing. It's awesome. Just to shout him out there and congratulate him again on the World Open War win with the Danish Vikings. But that means that you can't just net list. You can't just go onto whatever list aggregator websites out there and go out and buy the newest auto win list.
Yeah.
Because Bolt Action's a mature system. You know, there are eras, and I love that. You know, we had barbecue lists being in vogue massively, where you couldn't move for 6 flamethrowers jumping out of trucks, and you had bamboo spearmen, and you know, and it evolves, and I really love that. But you also see it changing locally. You'll go to one tournament and they'll be like, no more than 2 flamethrowers. Okay, well, the barbecue list doesn't work there. I'd better learn to play another way.
Yeah.
I think it makes for a much more rounded experience, which is a long-winded way of saying we love everything. We love it all because it all has its own merits. With that said, I have been asked before by many TOs, especially new TOs, what would you recommend?
Yeah.
You know, hey, do you have a tournament pack?
Yeah.
And for stuff like that, absolutely I do. You know, I absolutely have a pack it's the pack I use. When on the very few occasions I need to go and help an event out, I can just, nip down, I'll come and run it for you. It's all right. And that, that tends to be 1,000 points, single generic reinforced platoon, armies of and units specifically allowed in generic reinforced platoons only, and a 15 or 16 order dice cap. And that just for me is a nice generic simple way of running it. You can go super themed with it if you want to. You can go all out comp with it if you want to. It means that I can just drop that into whatever the theming or the framework of a tournament is, and whatever that tournament organizer wants to do. It's going to give them a relatively simple and easy grounding, and it makes it very easy for them to comp the lists when they get submitted. So that's kind of my ethos, my theory behind why we don't have a set of hard and fast, you should play our games like this rules, because we don't believe in telling people you should play our games like this.
Yeah, it's a refreshing opinion for sure. And I just wanted to give you a chance to say it, because I've said it for you plenty of times when I've come across people asking me the same question. It's like, well, actually, Warlord wants us to play the game how we want it. And I think, I guess to touch on kind of your earlier point about it being so vastly different, even at places geographically small as the UK, it's actually really interesting, because we thought here in Australia that, the main differences that we see between the West and the East Coast is, in bolt action and the metas here and there is because of the geographical distance. But apparently it just seems to be that if you get a bunch of bolt action players and you semi-isolate them, they come up with their own meta. And that meta will then shift and go in its own way over a period of time as well. So that's actually really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was fantastic with World Open War in Southend at the end of last year, which you've got to really consider as the bolt action sort of World Cup. It's one of those. Yeah. It's one of our 3 major events every year, with the World Team Championship, the Grand Tournament, and then World Open War. Is we had some of the very best players from across the world there, and we had a couple of teams come over from America.
Right.
And they were bringing over, there was one team in particular, the USA Swans. They brought a bunch of lists, but when the lists got published, everyone was looking at them like, are you sure? These don't look, people were looking at them with like the conventional European meta received wisdom.
Yeah.
And saying, we don't understand how these lists work. And then they got on the table, and in the first round, in the group stages, they nearly knocked Denmark out of the championship group.
Yep.
Like they came out of nowhere with these lists that people had never really seen before. People didn't know how to deal with them. And I was sat there like, I love this. This is amazing. This is so good to see.
Yeah.
Because it just proves that point that I keep hammering on about. There's no right way to play bolt action. And a personal sort of bugbear of mine is I don't believe in net listing. Don't believe that there is a winningest list in bolt action. It does come down to so much the skill of the player and how well you know your list. And I really love to see that proven in a really hard-nosed competitive environment. So I really enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah, and again, thank you for lending credibility to what I've been saying and up and down screening for such a long time. It's like, don't get me wrong, like having a more finely tuned list will be an advantage, but I think there are a lot of other war games where the list that you bring is weighted so much more in terms of like your likelihood of success. And I think people bring a lot of that baggage to bolt action and go, this so-and-so has a better list than me, so they win. It's like, well, you don't know who's going to activate next. You don't know which unit's going to activate next. You don't know if they're going to get to activate because of the pin mechanic. Like, no plan survives.
That's the glory of order dice, right?
Yeah. No plan survives first contact with the enemy, and it's like 10 times as true in bolt action, because once that second order dice comes out, like the first one, yeah, fine. It's a nice blank slate. We all get to do what we want. But then the second order dice, good luck.
It changes as soon as you draw that second one.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's that quote from Top Gun Maverick that they kept hammering on all through the film. It's not the plane, it's the pilot in the box.
Yeah.
And it's so much that I really love to see it. It's just great.
So I guess on the topic of World Open War, probably small elephant in the room. So HMG was supposed to put together a team to send them to World Open War last year. What ended up happening was we had a pretty long list of players signed up. It was going to be about, we had 8. Obviously, it's a long way for people to go. There's a lot of circumstances. And basically what ended up happening was over a 6-month period, we went from 8 to 5 to 3 to 2 to 1 and then 0 right in kind of the month or two before World Open War. And then it was basically just life got in the way of a very long list of potential players. So we're going to try again this year. We definitely want to go. So yeah, hopefully someone of us will be there. Last year we actually, again, couldn't actually send somebody from HMG, so it was just going to be a banner in a suitcase that people could trip the colors. But yeah, sorry, Bo. Sorry, Alistair. Sorry, Warlord. We're definitely going to try to get there as soon as we possibly can. We'll also try to drag a few of the guys from the East Coast with us.
Yeah, and so obviously it is one of those things where, in general, we understand that obviously just because of geography, the guys in America don't get to come over as often. The guys obviously over where you are in Australasia, that side of the world, don't get to come over as often. And by the same token, us in Europe don't get to come over in the other direction very often, which is a real shame, because that's one of the great things for me is, you go somewhere new, you're on holiday. When you're on holiday, like on like a beach holiday or something, you're like, I kind of really wish I could get a couple of games in, actually.
Yeah, I was in Japan for 4 weeks at the end of last year on holiday. And I got about 2 weeks in, and I was like, I messaged the group chat, and I was like, please, can I lock in some games the day I get back?
It seems to be
I think
seems to be a running theme that a lot of our players that or friends of the show and everything else, that whenever they got a work trip or whatever, if it's to the States, if it's other places in Australia, they're always hunting down for a bulk game. And I also wanted to bring up to your very early points, Marcus, about how diverse the actual tournament scenes are at the different venues within the UK. Completely mirrors what we've been saying this entire time. I mean, you're talking about visiting all different parts of England to these different events. A lot of ours are hosted at 2 or 3 or 4 different locations throughout the year, but almost every single one of them is completely different. And also your kind of generic selector for a tournament really mirrors a lot of things that we've seen in the past here as well. So I think we're all on the right page.
Yeah, so it's good. It's good to know I'm on the right track for one. But no, definitely even though it's at the same store, and it might well be more or less the same crowd, you show up and you have a completely different format of event, and it doesn't ever get stale. And it just gives you that impetus to try more things, and that obviously gives you the impetus to do more hobby. Which, let's be honest, that's kind of the core of the nucleus of it all, right?
Yeah, and
that's what it all revolves around.
Those last 2 bits is exactly why one of the main drivers behind the tournament that I started running, Band of Brothers, which is a team tournament that we have here in WA, West Australia, and it's my 3 main reasons for it was, 1, I wanted to bring teams to Bolt Action, because I think I've played team wargaming events, and they are hands down the most amount of fun I have dice rolling ever, both just for that day or the weekend, but also leading up to it, because you get that sense of camaraderie like you do in a sports team, and sometimes we get jerseys and all the other sorts of stuff to really sell it. And
that's what I love.
Yeah,
Sorry, just to jump in there. I'm a huge sports nerd. I love virtually any sport going. Grew up playing a lot of sport, and that's one thing I really love. Team events are some of my absolute favorites, because you'll be there and you'll literally be like, right, dude, we just need you to get a draw, like bat for the draw here, because we can go through the round. Or like, we've been absolutely hammered. We just need some points. You need to get a win here.
Yeah.
I love that little aspect. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of the marketing we did for World Open War. I made a very conscious decision to market it like it was a sports event.
And rightly so, yeah.
You see esports getting all of this good stuff, and esports really exploded in popularity once people realized that actually sports marketing works. But I wasn't doing it with any kind of that kind of level of cynicism or forethought. I just thought, actually, these lads are some of the best bolt action players in the world. It'll be a nice little funny treat for them to treat them like they're sportsmen, and do little interviews with them. And I think people really like that. I think the community really like to see that as well. So that's definitely something I think I'm going to be rolling out to the Grand Tournament as well, and to World Open War. So definitely we can expect to see a little bit more of that. And again, the jerseys, the personalized merch, I love that stuff. I'm a huge fan of Best Dressed as a spot prize.
Nice.
Because it encourages people, and I tend not to give it to people that have turned up in a full reenactment kit. But I do like giving it to people that have turned up, all in a team with names and numbers on the jersey,
Yeah.
Or the other one is if there's always one guy that turns up in a helmet, right? Always one guy.
Always
turns up in a helmet. And if no one else has turned up, in fun kit, he's winning Best Dressed, because he's the only one that's worn appropriate PPE for the event.
Yeah.
And it's just fun, though. It's just about having fun.
It is. And I think a lot of people, yeah, they just forget that. But I think the thing that team events really sell for me is there's a different type of like competitiveness that comes out when you bring a team with you to an event than if you go by yourself.
100%.
And I think just
100%.
and also my favorite thing is like I think this is the fourth time I'm running Band of Brothers. Every time it comes around, I end up having to just like matchmake for people because they don't necessarily have teammates, or the guys they play bolt action with can't go. And then I end up just like coalescing people who've never played games together, and then they rock up on the event day and they're like, they're willing to spill blood for each other, and these people were strangers like a few weeks ago. And that's the stuff
Yeah,
that I love.
it's just an amazing way to make the community to bring the community together. And as I say, I love playing team events. It's one of the sort of the great sadnesses of my role is I don't actually get to play as many events anymore as I'd like to.
Yeah.
Normally I've been involved in helping sort them out.
Yeah.
But then I'm going down to Three Good Men,
Right.
SSWG in Southend,
Yep.
same venue, and obviously
Yeah.
Russ, the TO for World Open War. But me and two of my best mates are going, and we've all worked for Warlord at some point in time in some
Nice.
capacity or other. But we're not going as Team Warlord. It's just me and two of my really good mates, and we're going as the Nottingham we're going as the Nottingham Casuals.
Nice.
And it's just going to be really nice to get down there, get out there, have some games, play hard but play the right way, and then pile into the bar afterwards for a few drinks and just general banter.
Yeah, there really
arguably
is.
The best part.
Yeah,
Definitely.
The other thing I really love about kind of being a TO is being able to inspire people to do more hobby. And when you're going to a tournament as a player, I kind of unintentionally you kind of get caught up in like, I have to build this model from my list, or I have to paint this, or I have to go get that because I want to, or I got this new thing ages ago and I have no idea if it's any good. I'm just going to whack it in the list and try it. And I have to build and paint it. And even though I'm one of those people who publishes their lists well in advance, and I talk about why I'm taking the things that I'm taking to the local events and that sort of thing, I'm not trying to be secretive about it. I think it just get lost in the sauce. But as a TO, seeing all of these people just like, like Dan over here is like, I just built 80 Japanese for your event. And there's other people it's like, I just like 3D printed an entire army of like all of these proxies and I built and painted all of these things. And I'm sitting here just like, I sucked you guys into spending more money.
It's very interesting.
Absolutely.
Because
Go on, Jacob.
The style of events that we do here, which mirrors exactly what you're doing in the UK, we just figured that out in the cast, that like all of our events are very different in selector, theme, order dice, all extra conditions and whatever else, that it forces you to try something different each time. So I'm mostly a player. I've only participated in assisting as a TO once or twice. And yeah, pretty much every event that we have here in Perth, in WA, there is something quirky that is very different than the last one. And that just gets me excited to try something completely different for my list. I've exclusively been collecting Germans for 3 or 4 years now. I don't even collect any other armies, and I'm still building new stuff for events. Like we've got ours coming up on the weekend, and yeah, new models need to be painted for it, and I do it every time.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's actually the best impetus to hobby. I'm one of those hobbyists where I'm an expert procrastinator. So I can know I can know 6 months in advance exactly down to the model what I'm taking to an event.
Yep.
And that could be locked in. There's no way I'm changing it. I'm still going to be painting the night before.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean,
but
I feel that's sort of the rite of passage.
Yeah.
It is that impetus, which is really good because it gives people a reason to hobby. And we all know, hobby burnout is a thing sometimes. You can just be like, oh, I've got like 80 Japanese on my table. Do I really want to paint them? Or you end up sort of butterflying, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But sometimes what you do want is, no, I've got a reason to paint those 80 Japanese because I'm going to take them to a tournament and absolutely smash with them. And it's just a really satisfying feeling as well when you're done and you can look at it and it's about sort of 4 a.m. and you're on your 11th cup of coffee.
A lot of confidence there, saying that you're going to smash them. I mean, I just paint models so they look pretty on the tables because we're all going to have a good game together.
and that's the thing, right? That's the biggest thing, is going to a tournament with the right attitude is so big, because I'm a very, very competitive person, very competitive, especially when it comes to any sport, especially any sports or games. But I'm by no means, one of the top players. So I'll go and I'll know that I might well get absolutely battered and go 0-5 over the course of a tournament. But for me, so long as I'm trying my best and doing it with a smile on my face and we're having a laugh all the way through, that's the most important thing. That's a win for me.
Yeah.
And there's been tournaments I've enjoyed losing that I've enjoyed more than tournaments where I've won.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think there's a line to be struck between it's not the winning, it's the taking part. And because sometimes it is about the winning. Sometimes you do want to go out there and challenge yourself and compete and push yourself to be the best. And that's absolutely fine, so long as you do it the right way, right?
Yeah. And I think also accepting that just because you set out to do that doesn't mean that you're going to. And also, if you don't do that, doesn't mean you failed. I think
absolutely
something that I see in, I guess, like some of the newer players who are trying to kind of lean into that competitive space, or whether consciously or not, some of the things that the two things that they seem to bounce off is this idea that, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to win, so it's not worth going, or I didn't win, or I didn't achieve what I set out to achieve, so it wasn't worth going. And that just grinds my gears.
It's a tricky mindset to get into. It can be a tricky mindset to get out of, but that's where a really good community, a really good environment, and a good TO, you don't need to tell them that it's not all that's the be all and end all. But when you show them that you're getting smashed, but you still had a great time though, didn't you? Because you're in the bar hanging out, and people do learn, people do come around. And I do think as well, I was actually talking on another podcast, an American podcast, about the importance of wargaming and education, which is something I'm really passionate about, because it teaches people to play fair within a rule set, also to win and lose with grace. And that's just such an important life lesson that you can take into business, into relationships, into every aspect of life. Being able to accept setbacks and, win. It's the Rudyard Kipling, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. It's so good for people to be able to experience that in a way that doesn't have any real world consequences. So what, you lost a game of toy soldiers? But you still get to experience all of that, and it's just such a cool thing that our fun little hobby actually does have all these amazing benefits to us as people that we just get without noticing.
That's definitely very true. We've seen our own player base with individuals who they've got started and are new to the game, and so they only look and think about the game in a certain way, and then as they go on that learning journey, they become really, really, really good to the point where we almost don't want them involved anymore because they're too good. We do a really good job of teaching people how to play, but it's because there is so much that you can learn that in the applications of what you're talking about, and even just we encourage people. It's like, when you lost, you understand where and why, so you don't make the same mistake. So you learn from that space, and next time when you bring your list in, next time when you play your games, you'll be aware of that, and you can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of the other thing with that whole side of developing people is it's developing relationships.
Yeah.
And those are your mates.
Yeah.
Those are you're making mates just the same as you'd make mates playing cricket or footy or whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go out. You don't have to go outside and get sunburned.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and we all know how war games feel about the sun.
yeah, but no, I think it's a real testament to both the strength of Bolt Action as a game and the strength of the community is that Bolt Action does the thing that I think all great games do, whether that's a war game, a board game, a card game, a video game, whatever. It's easy to learn and hard to master.
Yeah.
And I think that depth is just absolutely fantastic. It's a real testament to the community that there is this idea of let's all get better together. Let's learn. Let's bring people into the community. And someone brand new who's never war game before, they're not the club punch bags. They're not the easy win every week. People do, and I've seen it. People rally around and they focus on making them better, bringing them up so that they're able to have fun at that same level. And along the way, along that journey, everyone discovers, I think everyone's got that one bit of Bolt Action that they really love.
Yeah.
Everyone's got that one bit that's their thing. Like for me, it's really hard-nosed competitive play. For a lot of people I know, it's scenarios. It's, trying to do actual proper Orbats and recreate a scenario. For other people, it's the hobby, it's the painting.
Yeah.
And everyone is welcome. And that's the crucial message, I think, that a welcoming community puts out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the only possible thing I could add to that is I would actually encourage players to also try the thing that doesn't sound like their cup of tea when it comes to Bolt Action as well.
100%.
And including
100%.
including events and like styles of play, because there was a lot about this war game, a lot of facets that I had initially said, I don't know if I'm really keen on trying to do that in Bolt Action, but I'll give it a crack. And I guess to the system's credit, I'm like, this has worked pretty well. Don't get me wrong, there's some things that the war game does better than others, but it's a horses for courses thing. The point that I'm trying to make is that it doesn't matter what you want to do, you can do it in Bolt Action, from, as you rightly pointed out, all the way to the gloves are off and all the way back to kind of, no, we're going to count, the rifle and the man down to a shoelace, and we're going to try to match this experience and see what it was like.
Yeah, and I think that's just the great strength. And the best bit about that is in organized play, because I do talk about organized and supported play as a whole, and competitive play is just a facet of that.
Right.
Because I will support
100%.
themed events. I support theme events. I support beginner events. One of the best events I ever supported. Well, I forget which country it was in. I know it was in a country that doesn't do a lot of Bolt Action, but I can't remember which one. So I do apologize to the organizers. But it was a learning day where they basically went, well, we've got 4 veteran players. These guys are really, really, really good. And they've all got a bunch of armies. And we've got 4 brand new players who've never played and don't own an army. And they just paired each one of them up with a veteran, gave them an army, and played them through a 3-game doubles tournament. And the veterans weren't allowed to win it. The veterans weren't allowed to win any prizes. The veterans didn't earn any points or anything. The only way the veterans could get kudos was, I think they had like a best teacher or something. And that was
Nice.
about it. And it was all about these new players and introducing them to the game with someone who knew everything about it to take them through it and to assist them and to sort of catch them where they stumble. And I thought that's amazing. And I really hope more people jump on that format and copy it, because I'm absolutely certain, if not 4, they made a couple of new Bolt Action players that day.
Yeah, I'm
Fantastic.
100% stealing that format. Whoever came up with that idea, that was fantastic. All credit goes to you. When I find out who that is, you're going to get mentioned in the players pack, but I'm 100% stealing that format.
Marcus, got a little question for you on that. So yeah, you have a counterpart in North America who handles things there. You handle things in Europe, and you do some of the Australasia stuff. Can you list off the top of your head what countries you've been involved with that are running bolt action events?
So, yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start with some of the slightly more out there ones. And by out there, I don't mean any disrespect to the country. I mean, I genuinely didn't realize people knew who Warlord Games were in Venezuela and Peru.
Fair enough.
Amazing.
Yeah, we've had Venezuela, Peru. We have had Argentina. We've had Mexico and Brazil for sort of the South and Central America region. And there's, I believe also we've done Paraguay.
Right.
I think that one might be in the works.
In the works.
We've had South Africa. We've had places like Israel. We've had all across Europe, the whole smattering. Places that I didn't necessarily expect would have a big bolt action scene. And then obviously up pop Bo Mortensen and Jan Pedersen with the Danish scene. And I'm like, oh, bolt action is alive and well in Denmark. Obviously the Spanish guys are great. Very, very strong players. Of course, you've got the USA, you've got Canada, you've got yourselves. So it genuinely is global. Bolt action is played on every continent, which is just amazing to me. One thing I will say is we had a couple of tournaments recently in Ukraine.
Right.
Like guys were putting events on in Ukraine.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm like, fair play to you lads. That is dedication to wargaming.
Yeah. I certainly hope that all of their ambience was simulated. I'm not sure how I feel about putting like sounds of battle music on it next time I run a tournament. I think I'm going to exclude that part.
Yeah, but I say it's one of those things that it does actually just show how powerful hobby is. People in truly dire situations, you want to go out and do the thing you love. And it's just incredible, I think, just to see the level of dedication people have to this hobby all over the world in all manner of situations, from people who have got amazing, huge gaming mega stores near them where everything, beautiful air conditioned and manicured tables to, hey, literally no one stocks bolt action in my country, but there's like 10 of us. We want to have a tournament. Can you support us so that we can go to the toy shop and ask them to start stocking your stuff so we can get more stuff easily?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's that diversity of experience, that diversity of community, and everyone brings something a little bit different to it. And it's just spectacular.
Yeah.
I really love it.
That really is fantastic. Yeah. A lot of those countries were a big surprise.
Honestly, I just did.
I was just going to say, how do people get in touch with you or anybody in Warlord in specifics around getting support for tournaments and what to do?
Absolutely. So all you have to do is email info@warlordgames.com. That's our central customer service inbox. And all you have to do is just say in your email, hey, I want to run a tournament or an event. Can I get some support? And obviously, I'll then sort of I'll pick it up. I'll check with you. Hey, whereabouts in the world are you? Obviously, if you're North America, I'll pass you on to John Russell and his team. If you're in Australasia, I'll pass you to the lovely people at War and Peace. If you're anywhere else, you'll be sat with me. And basically, I ask you a bunch of really simple questions, as we call them. It is by now the famous 9 questions, which is just all about your event and, of course, what goodies you want.
Yeah.
And you answer those. We put your event up on our events website so that people can see it, people can find it. And then, boom, we send you off your parcel. You have a fantastic event. All we ask in return is that you take photos of people having a great time, of the armies, of the tables, of the winners getting their prizes. And if you want to do a tournament report, you can as well. and you send those through to us so that we can shout about how awesome your event was on social media.
Fantastic.
And that it really is as simple as that. I think the record, one thing I do ask is that you try and contact me at least sort of 3 weeks before your event, as a sort of a minimum, just so that we've got time to let, postage costs, outside postage times, let packing do its thing, and make sure it gets to you in plenty of time. With that said, I think the fastest I've ever got tournament support overseas was 2 days notice to America.
Wow.
Which was which obviously now we know that, or now we know that's a much longer lead time for that particular event. But we did make it happen, and if we can make it happen, we will. And if it does turn out that unfortunately we can't support that event, we'll always say we will love to support your future events. And when they say in terms of criteria, as long as you've got 8 players, and at the end of the day, someone is a winner of some variety, and obviously you're playing one of our games, we will support him.
Yeah, I can absolutely speak to that support. I'm not saying anybody should do this. In fact, I'm saying this as a word of caution to not do this. I had completely not hit the sent button on like a tournament submission form for Sean at War and Peace. And then I had this moment of panic on, I think it was a Wednesday, and the tournament was on the Sunday. And I was like, hey, Sean, this is 100% on me. I'll pay the express shipping if it doesn't get there on the day, all this other sorts of stuff. Like, no big deal. I'll wear it if you can't make it. No worries. He emails me back like 7 minutes later, and he's like, I packed it in an express bag. It's on the way. Fingers crossed. Wow. So don't do that. But it got there on time. I got it Friday morning, and it was there for the event. But yes, don't do that. But more to the point that, the logistics does certainly pay off.
Just one more thing, Marcus. So we've talked a lot about Bolt. Obviously, Warlord does a lot more historicals. Tournament-wise, or clubs, or anything else that you might be involved in, what else do you see out there other than Bolt through Warlord that you guys support?
Absolutely. So obviously we support all of our games if people want to play them. There are some games, I must admit I've yet to see an epic pike and shot tournament. I suspect we might not see one of those anytime soon. But we've seen Black Powder. I've supported Black Powder events. Supported Black Seas. Black Seas has been really quite popular as a tournament eventy game. Blood Red Skies, I think, is a sleeper. I think Blood Red Skies is one of the very best tournament-focused games we make. I think people really want to check out Blood Red Skies.
I've played a few games, and to be honest, the main reason I'm not playing more of it is because there aren't more people playing it. And I know that's a bit of like a catch-22 thing. But yeah, it is actually a surprisingly tight rule set. I was going to say, I meant surprising in the sense that, like, not that Warlord Games can't make a tight rule set. I meant that in the sense of just like, wow, this is like really good for tournament play. This is like, I just didn't expect it. It was it to be that tight.
People don't, which is a shame. So absolutely, the one I'd say is, if you are used to playing, shall we say, another space or spaceships but they're really aeroplanes kind of game with maybe half a dozen vehicles aside, and maybe for whatever reason you're a little disenfranchised with that, Blood Red Skies.
Perfect.
I would concur, having run several Blood Red Skies games as well. It's enjoyable. First of all, it's enjoyable to play, but it's actually very clear. Very, very easy to move that into a format to run squadron against each other, and it's well worth having a look at.
So there's that. Obviously, there's Conflict 47 as well, and there's loads of really cool stuff for Conflict 47 out there. People are starting to pick that up for tournaments again, which is awesome.
Yeah,
we love
really
K47, good. And it's a great add-on for bolt action players as well. Because if you've got a bolt action army,
add a couple of minis.
Yeah, a box of Shrek Wolford and a funky Walker, and you've got a K-47 army.
Yeah.
So it's a really good way again of getting the most variety out of your collection. Which again, obviously, for a lot of people, the cost is important. We get that, and you know, K-47 is probably the most efficient way to pick up a second system.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one to look into. And yeah, we also see, you know, the odd victory at sea, which is a lot of fun. And we do see kind of a weird spectrum, which is lovely. That's what we want, is people realizing, actually, we could do an event for this, you know, whether that's a campaign day or whether that is just a tournament or whatever. People are like, it doesn't just have to be bolt action. It doesn't just have to be a competitive tournament to a standard format.
Yeah.
It's our hobby, you know, and that's kind of the message I want to give to everyone out there is you're all part of the Warlord community and the Warlord family, and we love you and we love what you do, whatever it is you do. You know, you're having fun with stuff that we've made. And it sounds a little bit corny, but there is an enormous sense of satisfaction here at Warlord whenever we see people having fun with something we've made. Because, you know, sometimes you come to work and it's rainy and it's a Monday and, you know, it's cold because you live in England and you're like, oh. And then you look in the inbox and there's people that are like, check out these pictures from this tournament we had at the weekend. We had an awesome time. This tiger kill was absolutely ridiculous. And you're like, yeah, this is why we come to work.
Yeah, that's so really nice.
That's kind of the message I'd say is we love you all. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and thank you. I think particularly people who are kind of new to bolt action or maybe like Warlord Games in general, I think they bring a lot of this kind of like, oh, Warlord Games is this faceless corporation kind of thing. No idea where they get that from, but yeah, they bring that and they unfairly assign it to Warlord, and so many times, like, you know, I've had somebody new be like, hey, I got like just recently, maybe I think it might have actually been 6 months ago now, somebody bought like Armies of the Soviet Union off the shelf, just like the rule book for, and it was in black and white. And it was like, and he was like, oh man, I was really disappointed it was in black and white. And I was like, no, it's a misprint. Like they're supposed to be in color. And he's like, oh, maybe I should go get a refund. And I was like, yeah, you can, but honestly, just email the guys at Warlord and they'll take care of you. And he didn't believe me. And I was like, no, seriously, just send him an email. Like it's even just to let him know, it's like, hey, I got a misprint. I'm not sure if you guys know this. This might be like a QC problem or whatever. And then, you know, no surprise to myself, you guys sent him another copy. And I think it was, I can't remember what model it was. It was like a Patton or a Cupola or something, or maybe one of the Soviet snipers. Just like, here, oops, sorry, you got the black and white copy. Keep the black and white copy as well. Give it to somebody else, I guess. And like that's, I mean, what you're saying here and that kind of custom service, that's Warlord. That's kind of the message that I want to send to people. And
definitely not an outlier. I mean, everybody's got a story like this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got one. I had a miscast as truck front fender and just the front fender. Now, I'm an accomplished scale modeler. I was considering ways to rebuild that front fender, and I just said, I'm going to send a photo in and just go, look, this is mismold. I think I can fix it, but if you've got a spare, I'd love one. And you guys just cast one up. You were just like, clearly it's not molded the way it should be. Sure, you're saying you could fix it, but we're just going to cast it and send it out. It's not the product you bought. We'll give you your replacement part.
So that's the thing. That's kind of how we are as a company, and I will need to wrap up in the next couple of minutes, unfortunately.
And
that's kind of how we are. That's kind of how we are as a company. Is we look after the people that are involved with us because we really appreciate them spending their time and, let's be honest, their money with us and what we do. So it's the very least we can do is look after people properly.
Yeah, and I guess a fair point on that as well. I should mention the other stalwarts of the Australian community as well. So coming up this weekend, we've obviously got Bandit Brothers, but that's not the big deal that we've got coming up this weekend. We have CanCon. So there's Pete West is running basically what is effectively the Grand Prix of bolt action in Australia at CanCon this weekend. At last head count, I think they had 70 or 80 players. I think somebody might have a
Nice.
more. Yeah. And we had that was kind of the big one coming up this weekend. I know across Australia we have Operation Armour, which is actually held at a tank museum in Queensland. It's the largest tank museum in the Southern Hemisphere. I think it's run by Hari out from the Bacon Burgers, which is one of the other podcasts. I haven't not been able to attend that one yet either. Unfortunately, all of those amazing events tend to happen right when I'm needed here in WA for non-bolt action reasons. But I think seeing people play like Tank Wars next to an actual Panther and like other World War II vehicles,
it's unreal. We absolutely love that. I do just want to say, just before I disappear, is those events, especially things like at tank museums, that for me really is the spirit of bolt action. That's people in the community going out there and saying, we're not just going to put an event on, we're going to put a really cool event on that people are going to remember for ages. And that is just, for me, we're so privileged to be a part of that experience, right? That's something that people have chosen to do, and they've chosen to do it using something we've made, and that's just an honor. It really is. So all I can say is thank you so much, obviously, to you guys for having me, and also just to the community, obviously in Australia, specifically for a lot of your listeners, I imagine, but also the community worldwide. You absolutely rock. Keep doing what you're doing, and we will keep supporting and celebrating you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Marcus. It was a real pleasure to have you on the show, and there's a warm seat here for you if you ever want to come back on.
Oh, thank you very kindly, lads. I might just take you up on that. You have a fantastic day.
Enjoy. See you, Marcus.
Cheers, Marcus. Thanks for seeing us. Marcus. We just had that interview with Marcus from Warlord Games, giving us the full scoop of how they support all various countries throughout the world. And we did have to cut it a little short, but we did intend to talk about a lot of the events that are happening in Australia that are coming up. So I'm going to throw it back to Gorchin to tell us where we're at, and we'll start with us because we've got our own event coming up in a couple of days that Gorchin's hosting. So we did talk about it throughout the episode, but yeah, tell us a little bit more about Band of Brothers.
Yeah, just a brief one. Band of Brothers is a 3-player team event. So there's a draft mechanic about when 2 teams meet about who exactly plays who. So it's not a 3v3, it's 3 separate sets of 1v1. If somebody's played team events in different war games, that should sound a little bit familiar. If you're new to the concept, definitely check out the players pack. It's probably going to be in the description. It's usually pretty public about it anyway. The key thing about this time around, what I wanted to do differently, to go back to kind of the roots of the event, what I really saw was that people weren't bringing different things to different events, even though the restrictions were opening up. People were just kind of, I even like heard people saying it. They're like, oh, I didn't even read the players pack. I just submitted the list I used at the last event. And I was like, well, that's kind of not the point. I want people to try different things. So this time around, I gave out a lot of, basically access to secondary objectives was available if your team had a combined arms structure. So that meant like an infantry platoon, an armor platoon, an artillery platoon. And then you also earn some bonus free units that you could distribute out, because we also know that people hate nations that have access to free units. So why don't you just give it to everybody instead? And everybody kind of bought into that, which is really good. I guess so that means that the incentives worked. If you lay some incentives and people follow them, I guess that means the incentive worked. That's kind of the big one for this weekend. All ducks in a row. We got prize support from War and Peace, finishing off some prize support for some local guys, and just basically just doing a bit of terrain fishing, but I think we more or less got it sorted as of today. So looking to fire with about 20 odd players, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to that point now where we're starting to get people's real life get in the way, like injuries and that sort of thing. So we'll see how we actually go on the day. I know that there's about 6 players who are going to CanCon because it's the same weekend. And last time the event fired about 24. Previous times it had hit about 30. So I basically accounted for. I know where all those 12 players are, so I don't feel like I'm slowly losing critical mass, even though we're trending in the wrong direction. But yeah, CanCon is the big one this weekend, so that's Bolt Action's Grand Prix. Pete West is running it this year, carrying on the torch after the inimitable Hari Turner and the other guy from the Baker Burners. Who was the other TO? Tristan. Thank you. Yeah. It's late. Excuse me. Sorry, Tristan. I remember that you exist. I just had a momentary lapse where I forgot your name. Yeah. So those guys are from the Baker Burgers, which are one of the Star Wars over East, and then we've of course also got Brad at Cast Dice. So if you guys are kind of tuning into us, not really knowing what the Australian scene's about, those are kind of the big podcasts. Ghost Army podcast is back. I think they're starting to record again regularly and semi-regularly. So now you're talking about 4 Bolt Action podcasts. And between them, so I know Brad runs Operation Bear in Victoria. And Queensland, Harry's runs the Tank Wars event, Operation Armour at the Tank Museum. New South Wales, I don't know if there's a podcast in New South Wales. Maybe they kind of cross pollinate with Bacon Burgers. I think Bacon Burgers are just the East Coast podcast. And if you're in WA, everybody kind of like east of the Nullarbor is in one physical location. As far as we're concerned. And so New South Wales, if you're tuning in from Sydney and you're looking for events to check out, you've got Moab, I think it's Mother of All Battles, Codswallop, and Tank Busters. So those
you should be driving down to CanCon. It's only about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's true. This weekend you should be driving to CanCon, but if you're looking for some other events coming up, those are the big ones. And I think it would be criminal not to mention Darren out from South Australia, who has converted what is probably the longest running Bolt Action podcast Australia joke, second only to US Training Wheels, is, does anybody actually play Bolt Action in South Australia? And Darren has actually proven us all very wrong, and that there's an absolutely massive community out in South Australia. So credit to him for kicking up Operation Shrike. I think the first one was last year. I can't remember exactly when. The next one's coming up in March. It's going to fire again in November. So Operation Shrike, South Australia. If you like wine, go to South Australia. It's nice. It's quiet. You get to play some Bolt Action. You get to go on holiday and play Bolt Action.
And no shortage of events in Tasmania either. You just got to keep an eye out for ACTA on the Bolt Action Australia group, and you'll find everything that you need there.
Yeah. And if you're looking for missions to play, Bolt Action Alliance, I think they're either have redone or are redoing their mission pack, or they might have just updated it. But in any case, there is an excellent mission pack.
And we got our own coming too.
Yeah. Well, ours is up. But we're working on some finer tuning details there. If somebody like me doesn't forget to actually tell you how to deploy in a mission, that would actually be really good. And if you're local, like
I need to proofread.
Yeah. I think we need to hire an editor. That's what we need to do. I think in terms of WA, we've got a pretty full calendar this year. So we've got a couple of newbie-oriented events, so it'll be FNGs / take cover. I think Dan and I have to figure out exactly what we're doing with a very similar format that we both just cooked up separately 6 months apart. Skulls is happening April and November. That's the usual all-comers open tournament. I don't know what Justin's got planned for April, but I'm sure it's going to be a good one. Spartan kicked off last year to a great success. So this is the competitive tournament. If you wanna get good at Bolt Action at that top level, Spartan is the place to be. It's going to happen around the middle of the year. Then of course we've got Southern Thrust happening, I think around the same time. It'll be kind of the August period.
period. We've got booked in for September 21st and 22nd. We've got, so typically in July, there's some sort of narrative scenario event that Jackson or someone would try to run. I've just got my other brochure up on the other side. I'm going to be running Raider, which is another rookie to intermediate format, which will be, so we're trying to run those. Essentially, there should be 3 rookie events through the year now for new starters to get going on. We also missed Dueling Aces in June.
Yep.
Motor Mayhem in May. Because we've got almost one a month for this year.
So particularly for WA, Dan's really put together this event pack for the year. It's a PDF, it's a calendar. It tells you what's happening and when, and it gets regularly updated. You'll see it get updated every couple of weeks or months or whatever that there's a new revision. So yeah, if you're not sure where to play anything, that's the thing to check out. And yeah, we'll start promoting it in different places as well, because we know that not everybody's a Facebook guy, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna start seeing this stuff in places you haven't expected before. I mean, Dan's starting to open up with hosting events at Tactics, which is a new place for us. So yeah, with new players in mind.
Yep, it'll be so the first one we've got is Blitz, which is just a Tank War Games Day. Hopefully I'm not echoing too much here. And 19,000 points on the table. The lists are written. 10 spots, 20 millimeter, 2 tables, and a team distribution. It's going to be a blast. By the time this goes out, it's probably already happened and being booked.
Hopefully not.
And I suppose the very final bit of news from HMG / Western Tabletop is that we have finally hit 1,000 subscribers. So that means we have hit the most important YouTube milestone that there is. Second, of course, to getting a play button. But yeah, in no small part, thanks to all of you guys for listening to us. It has been a very grateful episode. I think everybody's been sharing a lot of gratitude. So probably makes sense that we take a minute and thank all of you guys for tuning in and checking us out. I obviously don't want to speak for you guys, but I'm confident in saying that I didn't exactly expect us to get here when we started the podcast.
Yep.
Very quickly, that expectation changed when I saw how many people kept tuning in and people kind of bumping into me and telling me about the things that I was saying, and I didn't even know who the person was around town. So that, and now we're kind of getting invitations from Bo and big names in the community internationally to go come play at their events as well. So yeah, it's very humbling, at least for me. I think for most of us that we're actually here and that we got here, and yeah, couldn't have done it without you. Yeah, there's just going to be more of it. Stay tuned. That's my piece.
And yeah, I mean, sure, we're getting a little bit of exposure elsewhere, and we're talking to people from Warlord Bow and whatever else. We're just going to share all that content with you guys. I mean, the more you support us, it just means that we're going to produce more things that you seem to like. You're all staying around for it. And yeah, this year we're all excited to branch off in a couple of different areas for the main YouTube channel. HMG is still going to be the primary content, and so is Bolt Action. So that's not going away. You're just going to get more of that and some supplementary stuff that you all might find interesting too. So yeah, thank you very much for sticking by with us. We're just going to keep doing our thing. You seem to like it, and yeah, I mean, we're always welcome for feedback in person, in the comments, all that kind of stuff. Just tell us what you're hungry for, and we'll find a way to serve it.
Yeah, and again, for me, obviously, there's the same as the other two gents on the channel. I'm very grateful for where we've got and your listening and views. Just keep telling us what you want. And the purpose of this was for us to get together and talk Bolt Action and enjoy what's happening in the Perth community and showcase that on a platform. Got a little bit more traction quicker than maybe what we thought in some ways. So, it's something we want to keep doing, and it's something which we think it's worth showing people the fun that we have and the community that we have. So we want to keep doing that, and keep taking all of the photos and start doing all those next pieces that we were looking at. So the battle reports, the first community spotlight episode is coming through, and those other pieces. So looking forward to what the next steps look like.
Cool. I think we'll leave it there. Thanks for checking in, having a good look into some insight from Marcus on how events are run across the world and are supported. It's really good to see that Warlord is not a faceless entity, and that they do care about the community and exactly what we're doing. And it does align with like our impressions of how they are online to how we hear them in the call. So that was quite refreshing to hear from a company such as Warlord. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yes, stay tuned for the next one.